Today is May 29th, 2008. I am Eric Mishnick, and it is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Fredonia, North Dakota. Can you please state your full name?
My name is Betty Brosz.
When and where were you born?
I was born June 1932 in Fredonia, out on the farm near Fredonia, North Dakota, Logan County.
Have you ever heard an interesting story about your birth?
Yes. Well, not so much about my birth, but when I tried to find, we were going on a trip to the Holy Land. Anyway, I needed a birth certificate. Well, our house burned down when I was a year old. 'Cause my father was the youngest, so then he was on the homestead, and I was one, my brother two, and my sister three, and our homestead house burned down, and they saved us, 3 children. And so anyway, I was a year old, and we almost perished, but they saved us, and so they're so thankful. That's all they saved was the children and the sewing machine. So they're so happy. I mean, we're also happy about that. But anyway, about my birth, so then we were going on this trip, and I wanted to get a birth certificate. Could not find any in Bismarck. There wasn't any. My 2 brothers and sisters, they were all recorded there, but I wasn't. So my brother said he always thought I was adopted, that I was different. Well, anyway, but I went to school then, and so we found that, and my mother was still alive, so we found all the references that I was born and am here. But I had no birth certificate, and but my mother said I was born at home, and they gave this midwife $5, and she was to do that, and obviously she never did. So there's no record of me being born, other than not being alive.
All right. Could you share some more memories with us when you were really young, besides your fire?
Yeah, I don't remember the fire, but I just remember them talking about it. And I just always remember those great big, we were barefoot, we were always barefoot. And then we go out in the field with the parents, and we just sit around the header box, and there's these great big, they're like grasshopper, but they were huge. And we'd take a stick and poke at them and play with them, things like that. And we'd be so hungry, and we just couldn't wait to get home to eat a piece of syrup bread. We got to eat bread before my mother cooked. She'd have to milk the cows, so then we'd eat bread. And then she'd put milk down into the well in a pail, and because the well wasn't very deep, and then we'd just bring it up, and we'd have this cold milk with syrup bread. We'd get to have that for lunch. That was so good before she'd make supper. So I just remember just making doing your own thing, having fun with just different things, We'd play with dirt. We'd make cookies out of water and dirt, and we'd make mud pies, and we would just make our own, have our own kitchen out in the field somewhere or something. We just do things. I remember. And my first doll that I remember we got, my sister and I each got a doll for Christmas, a nice big doll. That is the first doll I remember getting, and my brother got a truck. I must have been maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. And then we played out in the header box, my sister and I, with our dolls. And then we left them out there at night, and it rained. So my doll got all ruined, but my sister's didn't, because hers was upside down. So my doll's face got all wrinkled because it was, but I still played with it. That was the only doll I remember getting. Until I was 10 years old, then I got a little rubber dolly with a bottle. 10 years old, and I played with that.
What was your first doll made out of?
It was, it was quite, I guess, expensive, because it was hard, it was all, I don't know what you call it, but it had the eyes opened up, And like I said, the rain ruined so whatever kind it was, they were nice.
Okay. Let's switch a little bit and talk about your family.
Okay.
Could you tell me about your grandparents?
Yes, these are my father's parents, Ferna and Evelyn Krueger. Her maiden name was Kletke. Of course, they were in Russia, born in Russia. And when they came, they were all born except my dad, Arthur, and his sister Hulda Eisenweiss. Those were the only two born here. Other than that, they were all born in Russia. And that's all on when we were at Ellis Island, it's featured. I mean, their names are all on this document. And then from my mother's side, the grandparents were the Kasankis, Ed and Antonia. And this is my great-grandparents, Martin and Louisa Kasanki. And this is my grandfather, Ed Kasanki, and then he married Antonia. And that's where my mother is. And that's my mother and dad, Art and Molly, and Art's parents, the Broses, John and Emily Brose. And that's a Mr. and Mrs. John Wolfe. Mr. Wolfe married their daughter, Catherine. And Catherine Wolfe married their son. That's how it was, Krueger, yeah, my uncle.
Okay.
And the Kasankis, they were real, very strong EUBs. The Lair Tabernacle, my grandfather helped build that. And there was another church, the Tabor, the little EUB church. It was called the Blechenkirche because it was tin. And my grandfather helped build that. My mother was telling us, while he was building that, her brother died, so they had to run over and tell him that, someone passed away. And so they were very strong EUB people, but the Kruegers were Lutheran. They were strong Lutheran people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What type of person was your grandmother on your mother's side?
On my mother's side. Oh, okay. And her name was Antonia. And I don't remember too many funerals, but I remember hers. The pastor said she was a Mary and a Martha. And that all stuck with me because you'd hear sermons on Mary and Martha, but he said she was both. She was and when I went to high school, I stayed at their place, and she would always, she was the best cook. She always, cooked and always had interest in us, in visiting with us, and the grandfather. I always thought they would take time to talk to us.
All right. Could you tell us a little bit about your grandfather on that side?
On the Krueger side? Well, this grandfather, he died in 1930 and I was born in 1932. So I didn't get to know him, but my mother said the story. He was diabetic. And he, for a whole year, he was bedridden. And then one day he just got up, wanted to go outside, got dressed, went outside, and went out in the yard and whatever he did, and then he died. That day he died. And then, he was 70 years old. But my grandmother then, and she eventually moved to town. And so my brother, my oldest brother, my brother stayed with her when he went to school here in town for 1 year. And I remember her always having ammonia cookies. Have you heard of ammonia? That it's some kind of you only buy it in certain drugstores, and you can make cookies out of that. And they were the best, and they never got hard. And I just remember her so well with the ammonia cookies. And when at her funeral, at that time, they had flower girls at a funeral. Two of my cousins and me, we had to carry the flowers behind the casket. I have never seen that. That's the only time I heard of it. And I was part of that, and I'll just never forget that. That's what I remember.
Okay. And what about Your grandfather on your mother's side, do you remember anything about him?
Grandfather on my mother's side. Yes. That was Edward Kasanke. He's the one that that helped build the church and all that. The strong EUV. That was my grandfather.
Okay.
Hmm?
And did both of these sets of grandparents come over from Russia?
Yes, they were born in Russia. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard a story about their journey from Russia over to here?
Well, I just remember they would, after they were here, they were homesick. Now this grandfather, he was 40 years old when they came. So he would go, that's the story they say, he would go to, well, I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what they'd say. He was so homesick, he'd go on a hill somewhere, see if he could see Russia. And, he was just so homesick for Russia and all the families, because, he left his parents behind and all that, so. And so he was homesick. But I remember Grandfather Kasanke would talk about the grapes. They had beautiful orchards of grapes, fruit. I mean, he said everything was so good, and so you could just eat all day, and everything was, and they made lots of wine over there. He said, and lots of things, juice from that. And he said, but their orchards were just out of this world. He'd always talk about that. And in German, you say that the Ost, it was the orchards, the fruit orchards. And he was, if you stayed in his house, I went to high school, anybody that stays in his house has to go to his church. So I would go to the EUB church.
What region from Russia did they come from?
Bessarabia. And it's amazing. There's a Paris in Bessarabia. Paris, and that's the the name. So right here in the documentary from Ellis Island, it's Paris, and we have all this information. And both families were from the same area. So, and then my husband's family too, from the same area. So we just think, we're all from that same area in Russia. And we always wanted to go there, but we just never got there.
And where did your grandparents live when you were growing up? You mentioned that you boarded with one of them in town, but did they ever live out in the country? Yeah,
we all lived on the farm. We're all farmers, exactly west of here. And so my mother's parents and my father's parents, they were actually only a mile and a half apart. So they grew up together. And until we bought a farm, my dad, I think I was 7 years old, my dad bought a farm south of Fredonia. And then that's where we moved in. But before that, we were all west of Fredonia. All the Kruegers and the Kasankis. And then my husband's, they were from the Cullum area, south of Cullum. So in high school, that's when I met him.
When you were growing up, how often did you see your grandparents?
Yeah, quite often, really. I don't know, we would see them quite often. They'd take food over, or then once they moved to Cullum here, then they would bring in milk and cream for them and stop, and I have to say I saw them quite often.
Okay.
Well, the cousins would always, we'd get together many times, all the cousins, and you'd go to have a picnic lunch or something, and we would get together. I have a sister, and she was deaf, and my grandma would before I'd go home, she'd give everybody a nickel. But she gave my sister a dime or a quarter. Then my sister said, why? And then she said, because you don't hear. And she said, no, I'm happy. She wanted just the nickel like everybody else. she was happy, She had a good education, but there was my grandma feeling so sorry because she couldn't hear.
How many children did each set of your grandparents have?
There was, they had, the Kruegers had 9 living, 2 died in Russia and 1 here. It said they had 9, they had 12. Because I see on there that 2 had died. I think that was all on the record. And 1 died here after my father was born. He was the youngest. Then they had another baby and they died. So they had 12. And then the Kosankis, they had 9 living, and then one, so that they had 10.
Okay.
Large families.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about your grandparents?
No, can't think of anything right now. No.
Okay. You mentioned that both of them had fairly large families.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about your aunts and uncles?
Oh yes. They like to, especially my sister, because she was deaf. They'd always tease her, and they would teach her German words, naughty ones, because she couldn't hear, but she had a voice, so that they would teach her, and they had so much fun with her. And they were. We liked to stay at Uncle Otto and Aunt Ida's. We like to spend the night there and play with the kids, and I don't think they do that as much anymore. The cousins, they don't get together and stay overnight. But we would get to go here and there. I just remember having good communication with, and then cousins. And I remember I had a beautiful pink dress my dad had bought me. It was too small, so I had to give it to my cousin, and I didn't want to give it away. But I had to because they were kind of poor, and Frances was supposed to have that dress. So I had to give up that pretty pink dress. Give it to Frances, but we had good association.
Okay. And where did your aunts and uncles live? Did they live close to you?
Yes, all around, except for one uncle. Moved to California, who was a barber. That was my mother's brother, and he was a barber.
Okay. Did you have a favorite aunt or uncle?
Oh yeah, I did, because my dad's sister that was born here too, she was married to Eisenweiss, Hulda, and they had 5 girls. Always wanted, and we were only a mile apart, go to school together, and I'd stay there and play with them. And then, so my parents had to come and get me, because I just didn't want to leave this house with all the girls. Because my sister went to school for the deaf, and I just had a brother then yet, and well, so I wanted to be with the girls. So those were my favorite from the Kruegers, and then from the Kosankis, we had, one is the author of a book, Arliss, and so we were together a lot. There was many cousins, see, so you just had, that's probably the only time you would have company with your relatives, Well, neighbors too, but more relatives.
All right. Did you have a favorite cousin out of all your cousins?
Well, yes, I do, because we write each other at Christmas, and call each other, and so I have 2, one on each side, one on my dad's side and one on my mother's side. So, yeah, same age.
What types of things would you do with your cousins?
Oh, we would, I don't know, just not too much. We do a lot of talking. We play school, I know that. We would just kind of pretend one was a teacher and one would, do the singing, and didn't even have pencil and paper, but we played school. We did that a lot. And play church.
Okay. You mentioned you had large family gatherings.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I remember going to Grand Rapids, that's in North Dakota here. One time in the summer, all the relatives would go to Grand Rapids, and that was just a big thing, and we looked forward to it until I don't know how old we were, but that was our big thing. And then going to Laird Tabernacle, that it's a camp church. Everybody would be whole week services in German, and so we'd all go there and take lunches, and I remember that too.
Okay. What types of food would you have at these gatherings?
Well, always fried chicken, because your chickens would be big enough to butcher and have fried chicken, potato salad, and I don't remember anything spoiling. We had potato salad, fried chicken, and I remember having jars of sauce. They just bring the whole jar, and cake, of course, made from scratch, Krueger, things like that, and sausage, canned sausage. Yeah, it was nothing from the store, no chips or anything like that. It was things made at home.
Would you mainly speak German with these
Oh
relatives?
yeah, we all spoke German, yeah. Yeah, we're really a German. And in fact, we couldn't speak English. So we'd go to school and then we had to learn our English. But we had one aunt. My mother's oldest brother married a woman. She could speak English. And we thought, oh my goodness, Aunt Myrtle, she is just some extra because she can speak English. But she taught school, so she could speak English, but the rest of us, we were as German as could be until we started school.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add about your extended family?
Well, no, I just can't think of anything right now.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about your father then?
My father, yes. My father he died when he was 45 from a brain tumor. But before that, he was, hardworking and loved to sing. We'd go driving somewhere and he'd always sing, let's sing, sing these old songs. And so we wouldn't fall asleep, another reason, so we would sing. And I just remember him as, I had a little brother. I was 10 years old when our little brother was born, Charles. Oh my gosh, he went with him everywhere. He was 7 when he died, so he just, everything was Charlie. And then those older kids, we think he's kind of spoiled. But he was a good father.
Okay.
Yeah.
When and where was he born?
He was born at the homestead west of here in 1904, November 10th, 1904. And like I said, he was the youngest of that family, of the Kruegers. And so then, of course, he went through 8th grade, him and my mother both. And and so when they got married and had us 4 kids. And but I have a lot of pictures of my father with the brothers. I mean, they were all these big, tall, handsome Krueger guys from Fredonia. They were all handsome and tall. Kruegers are tall people, yeah.
How did your father express his emotions, such as fear or love or anger?
I saw him crying twice. I was just talking about that the other day. In 1942, he came home from town. He had to get some parts, and it had rained that morning. Came home, and then Mother had lunch already. All sat down to eat, and then he was quiet. And then he said that his brother was killed by lightning that morning. Then a tear came down his face. So that time, and then one other time, he didn't cry then, but he said, he came in the house, he said, President Roosevelt died. And at that time, I didn't even know who Roosevelt, but I remember that he was so sad that the president died. And now at the election, that's how I thought of it. Oh, I said, oh, I remember my dad said Roosevelt died. Franklin Roosevelt died, yeah. So I can't remember what the question was, but he would show his emotion by, he'd play with us. He'd go right down the floor and play with us and lift us up and do different things, yeah.
Okay. Can you describe your relationship with your father?
It was good. I always think my sister and I, we always stuck up for our father instead of the mother. I mean, for some reason, I don't know. And then my brother would stick up for my mother. I mean, I don't know. I've heard of more cases like that, but we don't stick up for our father. Because now in my own family, our 3 children, they all stuck up for their father. Not me, their father. And I thought, well, that it had to be because maybe I was just too, maybe he needed their help. I know he did because I get kind of loud and stuff. So I thought, well, maybe we thought my mother was loud with father or whatever, so we all stuck up for him. And my brother stuck up for my mother. I don't know if that was the question or not, but I remember that so well.
All right. How did he cope during the hard times?
Oh, he did a lot of talking with the neighbors. I mean, they would talk and, they had good communication. And, okay, then they butcher in the fall, to go from one neighbor to the other, and the women would make the sausage and the men would do this, and they would do all this discussing and talking. And so, I think that's how they managed by being good neighbors and helping each other.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about your mother?
Well, my mother died in 1993. She was 85, and she was a good mother. She, she, like she said, she lived for her children. That's how all mothers do. But anyway, she was. I still miss her. No, I didn't. But when we bought this house, she said, if I'd be 10 years younger, I would live in this house. She just loved this house because it reminded her of, her home. They had bay windows, and our house did too. So.
When and where was she born?
She was born west of Fredonia, 1.5 miles from where my father was born. So they grew up together, and from a big family. EUB, they were strict EUB. They didn't have to, but they sang in the choir, very EUB. And then she said they could not play cards in their house because EUB, you just don't do that. And then one night, all these young people were together, and they were kind of noisy, and they were playing cards. Mother always said that. And then my dad's brother, Alex, he was such a clown. He was there. And then they came, Grandma came out and she said, don't be so loud. And then Alex said, good evening, Mother Kasanki. And then he was going to hide the cards. And yet, they opened up and here was all these cards on the table. She said, I saw them anyway. But anyway, they had good times. The Kasankis and the Kruegers, they're both big families. Get together. We're not supposed to go to dances, but then they'd go in the hay barn and somebody played an instrument, they'd dance. They had their fun out behind the barn, like that song goes.
And how did she express her emotions?
Oh yeah, she could easily do it. She would just make a face, and I know when I would say something to my children, and she wouldn't say anything, but she'd make a face. Well, I knew she didn't approve. I mean, she wasn't too verbal, but I could tell her feeling by just looking at her. And well, she just loved her children and grandchildren. Babysat a lot. because my father was gone, so she would stay with us and babysit.
And what was her profession?
Her profession was when she lived in Cullum, she took care of an older couple, and she had to give them shots because they're both diabetic, and she did all that, and she thoroughly enjoyed it because she always wanted to go to school and be a nurse. Well, way back then you didn't go further than 8th grade. And so she kind of held that against them. She would tell my kids, all our kids knew that she wanted to go to college and be a nurse, but her parents wouldn't let her go. She would tell them that story. But she found satisfaction, take care of this couple, giving them shots, cooking for them, take care of them. So she found this nursing in there. And then when my brother was 21, she married another man, Emo, and they had a fairly good marriage, but then she did housekeeping. She cleaned homes till she was 78, I think, in Fargo. Yeah, so she did that. But I work in a nursing home, and she always thought that was good because that's what she always wanted to be. I'm not a nurse, but I do work in a CNA, and she enjoyed caring for people very much. She enjoyed that. And then she worked at Allendale, took care of a couple there. That was her gratification.
Okay. How did she cope during the hard times?
Oh, I don't know. All I know is they just did a lot of things together. I mean, they were just, I don't know. She would, sometimes talk about, well, they couldn't afford this, but they couldn't afford that. And I would know, I'd want something. Oh no, she said, that's not necessary. She'd go to town and she would just buy the essentials. Rice, flour, sugar, just the essentials. I mean, she just never splurged on anything because there wasn't that much. They knew how to provide.
Of your two parents, who was the more strict parent?
My dad would say, Betty, get the cows. I'd go get the cows. And our mother would say, Betty, get the cows. Well, maybe the 4th time, Betty, get the cows. I'd go, He'd say it once and I'd do it. And I don't know. So I would say we listened better to our father than mother. Mother, if she'd say something, oh well, we can get by with it for a while yet, And she'd say, in the morning she'd call up to get up because Dad was already out in the field. She had to call us, get us out of bed. And we'd put a shoe on the floor and make it sound like we got up. Okay, she said, I'm going to go get the cows. Well, then she knew that our dad would have, been upset if she had to go get the cows. So then finally we'd get up to go get the cows. But we listened more to our father than our mother. I don't know if that's in every case, but we weren't that afraid of her. And of course our dad never spanked anything. He just said it and we did it.
Okay. Then, did they ever have to discipline their children?
Well, my mother was so proud of the fact that our dad, he never touched one of his children, and he didn't. And she would, Betty, go do this, or Lloyd, or Marjorie, just like, like that, but never spank or anything like that. No, we never, just verbally, I would say, and I never had too much. We were all pretty good kids. Oh.
Who would you say influenced your life more, your mother or your father?
Well, I would say, I can't say that one did more than the other. I was just around my mother longer, you see, so I just learned more. but I just remember good things about my father while he was here, so, you know. But my mother was here longer, so I just naturally learned more from her.
Okay. You mentioned your parents were pretty close growing up. How did they meet exactly, do you know?
Well, all I know is that, well, they even went to the same school, you know, so, and they were just always together, you know, this whole bunch. They were big families, like the Wolf family and the Kruegers and the Kasankis. I mean, they were all big families, and they were just, I don't know, do stuff together, and no. So I guess they knew each other all their life, you know.
Can you describe their marriage for us?
I don't know. All I know is they would when I had when we had our little brother, we would just stay home and babysit him, and they would just go visiting and do their things. And as far as I know, you know, they had a good marriage. It was just too short. It was barely 20 years that they were married.
What types of things did your parents do for pastime?
Well, they taught us how to play pitch, because my sister went to the school for the deaf, and then it was just my brother and me and mother and dad. And they taught us how to play this card game pitch. You know, it's just a simple thing. It took us a long time, but us four would play that a lot. And then we played Chinese checkers, you know, in the evening with the lamp in the middle of them, you know, and then they would have house parties, the neighbors. There was one guy, he could play the accordion. He would go from one neighbor to the other, and they'd join, and kids would sleep somewhere, and parents would visit and dance in the kitchen and have a big lunch, and they would do that. And make ice cream and invite the neighbors over and have homemade ice cream. And we have homemade ice cream a lot. That was just something you do in the winter. So, and I remember when the sugar was rationed, we had honey, so we made ice cream out of honey. We didn't have enough sugar. You know. That rationing, you know, you didn't have all that food around.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about your parents?
Well, I would just say that they were hardworking, because they owned the farm, the big farm. My dad had owned it. I don't know how many acres it was, but they had owned it. It was a great big barn. Lawrence Welk used to play in that for $2.50 a night. And then anyway, that's the farm. It was Krueger farm that my mother and dad bought. But they owned that farm, so my mother always said, but when he got sick and died, had no insurance, see, so the big hospital bill, you know, she had to trade the farm. So she said we'd be well-to-do if, because they worked so hard and, you know, provided, if they'd had insurance. But didn't have it. At that time, he just didn't. So.
All right. Could you tell us the birth order of you and your siblings?
Oh yes, I was born, no, my sister was born March 24th, 1930. And then in March 14th, 1931, my brother Lloyd was born. And then in June 1932, I was born. And then in September 1942, my brother was born. I was 10 years old, he was born. Then my uncles would tease me, "You're not the baby anymore." They would tease me. Well, how is it that you're not the baby anymore? You know, Charles was the baby, because I was the baby until then. They'd tease me. Yeah, that was the four of us, yeah.
How did you react to having another baby in the house?
Oh, yeah. Well, we thought that was, well, the surprising thing is we didn't know Mother was pregnant. Isn't that strange? Didn't know she was pregnant. And we go to town Saturday nights, and then people would ask, my mother would sit on the car, and we'd walk the streets and have a grocery list, and they'd put that together, and my dad would pick it up. And then he would kind of park so, he could, she could watch people, but she wouldn't get off the car. That was strange. We probably knew but didn't want to admit it. I don't know. Funny situation. But anyway, people would ask, well, how's Mom? Oh, she's sitting on the car. Oh, okay. Because she wouldn't, she's pregnant. You don't go in public when you're pregnant. You stay in the car, stay at home. And so, but then we would buy her, she was on popsicles, so we had to go buy her popsicles while she's sitting on the car. And I remember that so well. Oh gosh, 10 years old. And so then one night then we had to get up and go to the neighbors. Well, that's when the doctor came out and he was born at home. So then we came home and the neighbor lady came along over and helped take care of him. When I think back how things have changed. Yeah.
Were all your brothers and sisters born out at the farm?
All born at home on the farm, yep.
Okay. Could you tell me a little bit about your brothers and sisters?
Well, the oldest was Margie. She was born deaf, and her head was like this. It was out the side, and so at age 6 months, 3 months, they took her to the doctor. Well, my mother was changing on the table, and at that time the powder was in cans. And she used powder on her and it dropped, and she didn't even flinch, so she knew there was something wrong, and we were so noisy. Took her to the doctor and he said, yeah, she's deaf. They can take her to Marion, South Dakota. There's a doctor. Took her there and the doctor said, yeah, he'd break her neck, because her auditory nerve was growing in the neck. He'd break her neck and she would either be able to hear or she could be dead. And they said, forget that, so they just went home. And she went to school for the deaf, and she just, a good education, and she just managed fine. And my brother Lloyd, he was always a hard worker because he was, the oldest boy. Yeah, I mean, when we moved from that farm over to the farm that they bought, I think he was 7. And he was already driving team of horses, he was handling. And we went to school on buggy, my brother and I, a little buggy, and the horse was named Star. And we would drive him. He would handle this, undo the horse and put in the barn, everything. What responsibility. And then that horse ate flax one time, and he died. So we got up in the morning and our Star had died. Oh, we cried. That was our horse. So we walked from then on. And then my little brother was born, and people said, oh, poor Charles, when my dad died. Poor Charles, what's going to happen to him? He turned out so well. He's in Bloomington, and he really is. My dad always said, that's my little mechanic. He would take a clock apart, and he would take everything apart, and my dad always said, that's my little mechanic. Well, that's his profession. He has I can't even know the title, but he is really up in educated himself.
All right. Did all you guys get along when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah. Well, my sister would be home for the summer, then she'd be in school. And, we'd have little sisterly spats other than that. Yeah, I would say we got along very well. Yeah.
Was there any competition in the family between you guys?
No, not really. There really wasn't. Well, we went to grade school together, my brother and I, and he was a year ahead, and then I would try and learn his spelling words, and I would know him. I know the words. So, and I think the one-room schools were good because there was a challenge. So, hey, this is 8th grade and 7th grade, I'm going to get those words. And the older ones, they taught the little ones phonics. So you're already teaching when you were, 7th graders, we were teaching the little ones phonics. And, so I think they had good education. You would hear every grade what they did, Yeah. But as far as really competition, we always got along well. Nothing, I mean, there's none. Some families have many things, but we never had any problems.
What type of mischief did you guys get into as children?
Oh yeah. Well, I know my sister and I, we would cook chocolate, sugar and cream and cocoa, and just cook candy for ourselves, and we just eat a whole dish of it. So there were no trace when anybody came. We ate it all. And then my brother, he loved chocolate pudding, and so when the parents were gone and little Charles was along, we'd cook ourselves a big kettle of chocolate pudding. That was our dinner. I mean, we would just cook that and then we'd do our chores. And a mischief, well, I know my brother would, like I said, he'd get on with his friends. They would do things, but I didn't know, not too much. We never tipped any toilets or anything like that I know that they do at Halloween. So I don't know, I can't really think of anything.
Which sibling were you closest to?
Well, my brothers and sister, I know, we were all close, very close. My sister lives in Victoria now, so, and like I said, she's deaf, so we do this. There's a free thing that you call, and they do this translating for you. So.
What was it like when she left home for school?
Oh my gosh. My grandparents, Kasankis, said, "You just don't want that child, That's why you're sending her on, it was 160 miles here. You just don't want that child." And so anyway, they took her to Devil's Lake, and then she cried, and then my mother would tell this. And then they were at the other end of Devil's Lake, and then my dad said, "Let's go back and get her," And mother said, "No, she just has to get an education." Well, everybody was crying, but no. So my mother was the strongest, I'd say, because my dad said, "Let's go back and get her." And she wouldn't do it. But anyway, when my sister was like 9 years old, she was sweeping the floor. And then she said, "If I wouldn't be in school, I'd be this means dumb, I'd be as dumb as this broom." Then my mother said, there was the answer. That it was so hard to take her to school, but there it was, So she said that story so many times that she was so proud that they took the courage. And there was a man in Cullum that had never gone to school. We'd go to town and he'd always stand around the corner, and he was deaf. And then my sister would say, "Why didn't they send him to school?" Oh, she'd be so upset. There was a girl in Fredonia. She was 12 years old. Deaf, wasn't in school. So my sister went with her, played with her. They went to church together, and they would just spend the afternoon with her. And when she took her to school, she stayed with her, and she went with her then, slept with her in Devil's Lake for a couple of nights. And after that, she loved school. She was 12 years old. And my sister said she has to, and her parents, they would let her go with Margie then. And they're still friends. And so she was the one, you gotta go to school. And she always said you have to marry somebody that's deaf. It doesn't work, if you marry a non-deaf and a hearing, it doesn't work. So the man she married, he was deaf. And they had one daughter who was the highest in the class of 800 in Chicago, Illinois. I mean, she was a brain. That's who she lives with now, because her husband died.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about your brothers and sisters?
Oh, we're so thankful that we're all still alive. Yeah. My brother will be, my brother's 65 and 75, 76, and 77. Yeah. Wow, we're all a year older now. So we're just thankful that we're still alive.
All right, and what about your family?
Well, this is my family. And my husband died 5 years ago. And we have 3 children. Julie, Tim, and Roxanne. Julie lives in Jamestown, Tim in Bismarck, and Roxanne in Florida. And those are their husbands and 6 grandchildren. And the 2 girls are in college, and one's working in Fargo, the oldest, and the 3 boys are in Florida. Roxanne has the 3 boys. And so this is my beloved family.
All right. And where were your children born?
Julie and Tim were born in Allendale, and Roxanne was born in Jamestown. So they all 3 graduated from Jamestown High School, and Tim graduated from NDSU, and Julie Valley City College, and Roxanne from Moorhead State College.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add about your family?
Oh, we're just thankful that we have them, and we have good times together. Last year, when I turned 75, the youngest in Florida took me to New York. So we had a good time there. Saw Broadway shows and went to Ellis Island, and so we did that. And Julie lives in Jamestown, so she's, we go to the same church, so we do a lot of things together. And Tim in Bismarck, I see them quite often. And of course, Roxanne in Florida, we would always spend a month there, but now I still do that. I'm alone. Have a good time in Florida. We always said we're glad she lives there, else we'd never had a chance to go to Florida. Oh. So.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, it's.
All right. All right, Betty, where are we today?
We are in Fredonia, North Dakota, Logan County.
Okay. And what is this house here?
This is a house, I grew up in the Fredonia area on a farm, but I always wanted a house in my hometown, so we bought this about 18 years ago. And it's nearing 100 years old. The city's 104 years old, so it's about 100 years old. And so we bought it like 18 years ago for $200. And it's just we just love to be here. My husband passed away, but I still come down and with the grandchildren. We enjoy this.
Okay. And what have you done with the house since you've had it?
Oh, we have shingled it and give it 1 coat of paint. And that's about it. Cut down a lot of trees. Trees were growing wild, so we cut them down.
All right.
And
what does the inside look like now?
oh, it's very primitive. It's the way it was, the original floor, linoleums. And just all our old things, and it's very original.
Okay. I understand that there's an outhouse in the back.
Yes, there is.
All right, let's take a look.
Yes. It's a double one, his and hers, Herr and Frau. And my granddaughters, they painted the profiles on here. And just has one hole. Of course, they use catalogs all the time. Or if they canned fruit, they'd use the paper from the peaches or so, you know, that was all put into the outhouse. Didn't waste anything. There was no toilet paper at that time.
Did you have an outhouse when you were growing up?
Oh yes, had an outhouse, and I just wonder how we managed in the winter. I really don't know, you know, I mean, but that's how it was. We used it as much as possible, as long as we could, because there was no running water and no indoor toilet, so had to go outside.
Did you ever have any chamber pots or any other type of toilets?
Yes, we had the chamber in the homes, you know, upstairs and downstairs. And then, of course, it was the kids' jobs to carry them out and rinse them out. So, and we had to do that before we went to walk to school in the morning. So we had a lot of chores to do.
All right.
But as I think, you know, I mean, we had a good time. It was good, healthy living. Hard work. There's a chicken coop that has the nests are still in it.
Okay.
When they plant a garden here. And then this was a garage at one time. And that's where they had to feed the chickens, was in there. And of course, our water pump had to do that.
And what do we have here?
Oh, this is a pump. This is our running water. You run and carry it. As we were growing up, there was no such thing as, you know, electric or whatever. This was our way of providing water. And that's how we got our water. And when the water pail was empty, one of us had to go and get the water from the pump. And this was similar to what we had on the farm growing up.
What types of things did you have to get water for?
All the house use. And then if you'd go feed your chickens and hogs and that, you'd have to carry the water. Washing clothes, go heat it in the house, and then, yeah. This is the only way of getting water was from the pump. And then to feed the cattle, of course, we had a windmill, and that would draw the water for the cattle.
You want to go over to the chicken house?
Yeah, sure. This is where they'd have their chickens in town. It's not allowed anymore. She can't see in here, can she? Yeah, no. Here's the nest. Here's where the chickens would roost, up here. And then the nests are filled with straw, and that's where they would lay their eggs.
Did you have a lot of chickens when you were growing up?
Oh yes, a lot of chickens, and of course you'd can all the meat. That's what we ate, was a lot of chicken, you know, until it was time to butcher in the fall. And of course eggs almost daily. Your menu, you had eggs for some one meal or the other. And yeah, and sometimes the hens would go out on their own, and they'd lay the eggs and have their own nest, and here they'd come walking with their little chickens, you know. We didn't even know where they hatched them or anything. And that was always fun to see that. And it was all colors, because we had all kinds of chickens, just not one kind, breed. So we had all kinds, and that was fun thing. Children loved little chickens, you know. I can just remember all that.
Did you have to clean out the chicken coop?
Oh yeah, that was part of our job too. And the nests, you'd have to put in fresh straw, so the nests are nice and clean, and gather them every day, because if not, they'd break from too many eggs in the nest. So, and that way they were fresh. You know, they were the fresh eggs. Yeah. And you can tell there's a lot of rhubarb here. That was, we had rhubarb pie, rhubarb jelly, and rhubarb wine sometimes. But rhubarb was a very stable thing, because that grew. If nothing grew, rhubarb grows. So,
Do you remember how your parents made the rhubarb wine?
well, actually, my parents never made that much wine, but they did make a chokecherry wine,
Okay.
and because they were in abundance too, and so we would have occasion to do that. But my grandfather, he said chokecherry wine was healthy, so he's the one that really made most of it. We didn't make too much of it, but we would get to taste it.
What other types of things did you grow in your garden?
Everything. I mean, you just grew everything. Uh, well, all the vegetables, and then on the field you would plant pumpkins and watermelon and muskmelon. They call it the Bestand in German, and that'd be out in the field, and you would keep that. It was never watered. I guess it just always rained. And in the fall, you'd have all these good things that we would can. My mother canned pumpkin, and we'd eat watermelons, have watermelon pickles. And then sometimes I remember my brother and his friends, and I happened to be along. They stopped at somebody's, it wasn't ours, and they took some, you know, like you might say, stealing. but it was in the neighborhood, so all the boys, they kind of did that. And there was so much of it, families really didn't care. And yeah, gardens was very important.
Who had to help tend the garden?
Well, all of us. Yeah, we just did. Then my dad would, for the potatoes, my dad would plow with the small plow. He would plow, and us kids would put the potatoes in the row as he plowed. You know, so we had lots of potatoes. Yeah. Not a little one like this. I mean, we was out in the country, and so yeah, that's really what you survived on, was your gardens.
What were some of your favorite foods that came out of the garden?
Well, I think your canned pickles. Of course, you like pickles, you know, and all kids like pickles. And my mother would pickle watermelon, and make, of course, lots of jellies from chokecherry and rhubarb, and that was always good too. And carrots, canned carrots, and peas. We just canned everything. Yeah, and tasted good in the wintertime.
Do you remember how your mother canned?
Oh yeah, I can myself yet. Yeah, yeah. You have these great big kettles and put it in, cook it for hours, and so it seals. Yeah, and you sterilize, you know, the jars. You know, they're very clean. I mean, if I think back, everything was sterilized. You know, and they were clean. I mean, everything. Always had to wash your hands before you do this and that. And when I think back, you know, without running water, they were very clean. That's what they say about the Germans. They're clean people.
How many days would it take to can and make jam and do all those
Oh,
things?
that was all year, all summer thing. Whatever that was ready, you'd can that, and when that was ready, you would do that. And so it was a. And then in the fall, you'd can your meat. So it was a process that you do all year. I'm not all year, but all summer and fall.
What types of chores did you have to do around your farm?
Oh, we'd have to milk cows and, oh my gosh, out and, feed the chickens and hogs and then milk the cows before we went to school. And of course, every morning and evening we'd milk the cows and separate the milk, the cream, from the milk, and that was all our kids' jobs. And then we'd go out in the field and help shock bundles and do the hay. We did all of the work. I mean, there was no hired hands. If you had children, you did the work. And so, and then we'd help with the harvesting, and we just did a lot of work, really. But it was good work. It was healthy, fresh air, and you got your exercise. You didn't have to go to curves like I do now. So it was when I think back, it was good life. Farm life was good, clean life, healthy living.
Did you have any favorite chores?
Yes, I think feeding the little calves was fun. Yeah, they'd be weaned from the cows, so you had to feed them from a pail. And that was fun because everybody wanted that milk. So that after it was separated, it was fun feeding those calves. And then to get them started to drink from the pail, you had to use train them to use your fingers. And once they knew how, then then you'd milk the cow and feed the calf from the pail.
Did you have any least favorite chores?
I think I didn't like washing the separator because that was a daily thing. And my sister would go in the house because she'd clean that whole house, and I'd be out there washing the separator. By the time I came in from washing that, she had the whole house cleaned. I mean, she was just faster than me. And I think I didn't like it because, I don't know, it was such a slow job. Oh, and another thing about milking cows, we'd feed the cats would sit there and wait for us. And then we would turn, the udder a little bit and milk, and right into the cat's mouth. They would open their mouths and they'd drink while you were milking. I mean, they were smart. They just sit there and wait till this milk would come. So we had our fun doing that too.
Did you have a lot of cats on your farm?
Oh yeah, we always had some. Uh, they, they weren't in the house. They were outside, but they were nice tame cats. Yeah, they ate mice, catch mice and all that. Oh, we always had cats and pet dog, and yeah.
Did your chores change between the summer and winter?
Oh yes, in the spring you had all this milk, and then in the fall you'd have less because the cows would kind of get dry, and and so then you wouldn't have quite as much milking. And then in the winter you didn't have too much at all, but it was always so cold. The milk would practically freeze on you getting it before you'd separate it. And then you'd feed the cattle the hay. You'd go upstairs and put the hay down the mounds and help with that, help our father with that. Do all that mostly before you went to school. My brother had to do that. We would just milk, but he'd have to do the hay, feeding the cattle and all that.
All right, Betty.
Yes.
What room of the house are we in now?
We're in the dining room.
Okay.
And I have 2 tables in here.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about the glass you have here?
Yeah. This is called Depression glass. It was manufactured during the Depression, and this particular brand, it's called Florentine. They have all these different names for different patterns. And these were sometimes given in like cereal boxes. I have a green set out there that came in oatmeal. So you'd buy oatmeal and you'd either get a cup or saucer or whatever, and that's how you collect it. And these were sometimes, given, but then you could buy them too. Very inexpensive, but they were manufactured during the Depression. That's why it's called Depression glass. But now it's very valuable. Like I would say, like this plate would be for sure $25, and that's the smaller. Because I have the larger ones too, and I paid 20 some for them years ago. So it's they're getting pretty spendy. And this is a toothpick thing. It's O2. And if you see a line in here where it's pressed together, that means it's Depression glass, and this is toothpick holder. So those. We use the glasses all the time at home. I have a set of 12 that we use all the time. You don't put them in dishwasher. You just use them. And but that I use occasionally, but not too often. Mm-hmm. And of course, the lamp, that was in the middle of the table, and you'd sit around, and that's where you got your lights from. And did your studying and reading and whatever with the kerosene lamp. And that was a little more fancy one there.
Did your family have a particular seating order when you guys sat down to eat?
Yeah, we did. We always sat in the same place. And are you talking about my family, my children, or
when you were growing up?
Yeah, we all sat the same place. We had a bench. Two would sit on the bench, and then a few chairs. Always had to have a bench, because you get more kids on a bench on chairs.
Did you have any dinner time rules at the table?
Well, we would say our German prayer, Abba, liebe Vater, Amen. And we taught our children that too. And everybody always just said that, Abba, liebe Vater, Amen.
And what does that mean in English?
Abba means dear God, just dear God, amen, something like that. Okay. Liebe means love, Father in heaven, and amen, dear. However, my children always ask me that too, and sometimes I have it right, and sometimes I don't. But they're teaching their children German too. Even the Italians, they know how to say it.
Did your family play the checkers and pitch around the table?
Yep, we would sit around, and anything you did was around the table. And it was just, because that's where the light was, so that everything was done there. And I know we had to have a stove, it would be right over there, big stove where you'd heat the water and everything. And we'd open the oven and stick our feet in there to keep warm and do our studying. I remember that so well. And then we'd still get some light, from the table.
Did you have a lot of homework to do?
Well, I think, because I know we would do homework, so I think we had quite a bit. Because we, one spring was here, you missed a lot, My brother, if you had to go out in the field, he wouldn't go to school, so you had to go and study while you could.
Where would you get the heating oil for these lamps?
Oh, it's a kerosene. You would just buy that. You'd have a big barrel full. Just buy it by the barrel full of kerosene. When they, you would just buy a big barrel, and because I remember we'd always have to go and fill the lamps and clean the chimneys, As long as our job.
Did you have a lot of housework to help your mother with?
Oh yeah, oh yes. Did a lot, scrub the kitchen, you know, and chairs like that. You know, you'd put your feet on the different areas and it'd be mud on there from shoes and wash that all off and everything, scrub the floor, and polish everything with furniture polish and oil. We had an oil, I know. Yeah, we were taught to clean.
How often would you have to do these household chores?
Oh, well, like scrub the kitchen, it was a weekly thing. Or whenever it was bad, you know. Sweep every day, but to scrub probably a weekly thing. I'm kind of out of the habit now finally. It just thinks, it's not dirty, I'm not going to scrub it. It's just because it's the end of the week, I'm not going to. Hard to change an old habit, but.
All right. And how did you heat your home when you were a child?
Oh, we had, it was larger than that. We had a big pot-belly stove in the living room, and then a regular cook stove in the kitchen. And then, but when spring came and summer, then Mother she would take off all these pipes and wash the walls down, or probably even wallpaper. And for the summer, and even the cook stove, take that down, because you used a kerosene stove in the summer. And so then you try and keep this room cool. But that served the purpose. We carry in the coal and wood and keep everything going. That was our job.
So it was the kids' job to keep the...
Kids, they could, yes, and because after school, you're always hungry, you wanted to eat some. No, we had to carry in the wooden coal first, because once you undressed, you didn't want to go out again. So we had to carry that in, and then we'd get something to snack on before it was time to milk. And many times in that old cook stove, to this day, I like my meat burnt or dark, because my mother would put the supper on the cook stove, and then she'd go and milk, and I was supposed to watch it well. She could smell the sausage burning, she'd say, she'd walk in from the barn, and Betty didn't put the sausage back, so we had dark sausage for supper, but I still like it that way.
All right, what room are we in here now?
We're now in the kitchen. I would say that's the most popular room in anybody's home. That's where people like to gather food, keep warm. I was just looking at this. Did you know that this comes from an oatmeal box? I mentioned that before, but that's how you gathered your dishes. You collected them. Buying oatmeal, and then you had cup and saucers in there. And, so those are collector's items now.
Could you describe for us what your kitchen looked like in the house that you grew up in?
Actually, similar to this. It really did. Just similar. Like in the summer, we used a kerosene stove. In the winter, we would have a big range and have table and those kind of chairs and then this, the leaves come up on the table, and that's what we had at home. The leaves would come up, and that's so much like it. And those are the kind of utensils that we used. It either had red or black, the enamel. And then those plates, that's what they gave away at Christmas. The stores. It was the Co-op store and the Eilhart store and Laird, they had store, all the stores. People's store in Cullum. That's what they gave away, was salt and pepper shakers and platters and different things. Mm-hmm. And calendars, they have Fredonia calendars around here. Mm-hmm. And then we'd use the kerosene stove in the summer and do the canning on it and everything, and it would just not give off as much heat as a. And then you'd have a. I have one at home in Jamestown, but not here, where you'd bake your bread. It's an oven. You put it right on here, and of course some of the stoves they had it built in, but we had we just put it on, and then you bake your bread and take it off when you were done. I have to bring it down here. It's a cute little one. I have to bring it, bake bread here sometime.
How often did your mom bake bread?
Oh, for sure twice a week, for sure. Because then she'd make the dough, and then for lunch we'd have kichla. That means you'd stretch the dough and then deep fried. That was our lunch. And then the evening we'd have dumplings from the dough. And then loaves of bread, lots of loaves of bread. And sometimes she'd even make with cinnamon and cream and sugar, we'd have like a caramel roll. There was a lot of dough. We thought that was always a treat. So we had 2 meals for sure that were out of dough every week.
You mentioned that you had 2 different types of stoves. How did you move one in and move the other out?
No, the other one was stationary. That was stationary. And our kerosene stove, we would have that in the front entry. So then we could even keep, if there wasn't room, because, that you could move them. But the wood stove, that was stationed, that stayed. You would just polish it nice and black so it looked nice for the summer. And take the stove pipes down. My mother always took them down, because then she'd either paint or wallpaper or, wash the walls.
How often did your mom paint or wallpaper?
Every spring, spring you'd have to wash the walls. And yeah, it was just spring cleaning.
Okay. Did you have to help your mom prepare meals?
Oh yeah. I never liked to, I would clean the chicken, but she'd have to cut the head off. That part I never did. She would do that part. And so, yeah, we helped a lot. We knew how to work, period.
What were some of the favorite meals that your mom cooked for you?
Oh, I would say that we liked, to this day I like fried sausage and creamed potatoes and milk soup and vegetable soup, and I think we liked it all. And donuts. We had a lot of donuts because you had all this lard and if we're out of bread, then she would make biscuits, and they were so good, or pancakes, a lot of pancakes. We just improvise. And so everything was good.
So was there any food that you disliked then?
I can't think of anything. I really can't.
Okay.
No.
You mentioned sausage earlier. Did your family make their own
Yeah.
sausage?
Oh yeah, we butchered, and then made the sausage and liver sausage, and then canned a lot of like the liver sausage, canned that in jars, and canned some sausage. And then of course we'd butcher in the fall, and then you'd put like the hams and things in the smokehouse, and you'd smoke the sausage. So that preserved it, and then the rest you put in a big barrel and put salt in there and freeze it, and keep it all winter. It would just stay froze most of the time. And yeah, so we had good meals, and then they would butcher. My mother would raise turkeys and ducks and geese, and then the neighbors get together and help butcher, and they give each other whatever they didn't have, and it was always a thing that you would do together, either with neighbors or with relatives. Yeah, I get hungry for canned meat. I don't do that anymore, and I get hungry for that.
What was your job on these butchering days?
Well, I tried to stay away. I didn't like it. I know when there was school, I think I took a long time in walking home from school, and I just tried to, and if there was maybe a child there or something, and I would go play with the kid or try and babysit, so I'd stay away from the mess. I didn't like butchering.
Did your family make any head cheese or
Oh
blood
yeah,
sausage?
they did, not blood sausage, but head cheese they did, yeah. Yeah, did that. The first I heard of blood sausage was when my husband and I went to Germany. We were there for Oktoberfest, and they had all this stuff, blood sausage. So we never had that.
Do you remember how your family made head cheese?
Well, all I know is you had to clean part of a hog. I don't know what part was it. I think I don't know what part it was, but you cleaned that and you used that. You put in different parts of the head and whatever. I mean, they did it all. Once we were married, once I was married, we didn't. We butchered probably a few times. Other than that, we'd have it done. We wouldn't do it. But my family and my husband's family, he had an older brother, they would do it, but I kind of stayed out of it. That and milking cows I don't miss.
Where would your family store all the canned goods and the sausage?
Oh, we always had a cellar. Mm-hmm. You know, under I know out on the farm we had, you'd open a trap door, and that was our cellar. And then after we were married, they had a bigger trap door, because they had a bigger one. But the one in our house, it wasn't that big. It was just enough for the potatoes and, you know, all the canned stuff.
Did you ever have threshing crews come to your farm?
Oh, yeah. In fact, my father and Chris Krueger, they owned a thrashing machine. So they would thrash, you know, ours. I mean, my family's, my dad's, you know. And then Chris, and then they do all the neighbors, the Babitskis, and they just go down the road and do them all. And my mother would go along, and because some of them were young couples, you know, they weren't used to cooking all, so my mother would go along when she had more experience. She'd help these ladies cook, because there was lunch in the morning, lunch in the afternoon, big suppers, and so they were busy doing all that. But I also think they had good times, because I just remember them, you know, laughing and doing things, and being tired, trying to go home. And then I would walk home from school, and it would get dark before they'd come home, but because they were so far away. So I would just go to school and walk home and wait till they got there. And my brother he'd have, in the fall, he'd help with the bundles, you know, because he didn't go to school then, he'd help with that. Till they were done thrashing, because that was a big thing. And then you'd have all these straw piles. I remember one year in June, we were through seeding, then my dad, they were building a greenery. It was in June. And my mother found some ice inside this big straw pile, and we made ice cream in June. I'll never forget that. That was so good. On a hot June day, we just stopped and we ate this whole thing of ice cream.
How did your family make the ice cream?
Oh, with a old-fashioned, you know, crank type. Yeah. Oh, we made a lot of ice cream.
What types of flavors would they make?
Usually just plain vanilla, and then sometimes we'd cook chocolate, you know, with cocoa. Usually just plain.
Okay. When the threshers, when your family threshed, what jobs did you have to do?
Well, I would take lunch out, help carry the lunch out in the field. You know, if it was not too far away, you know, we would carry it. And a big thing like this, only a great big white pail, when it was big white enamel, coffee. And they had to have coffee. And then the other hand was probably Krueger, donuts or cookies or something. And I remember carrying it out many a times because my mother was busy with other stuff, so I'd carry the lunch out.
What other types of foods were cooked for the big meals when they came in to eat?
Always, chicken was very, and then I think, it was always a big meal, you know, and pies and pigs in a blanket they'd make, and a lot of potatoes, because you'd already probably have fresh potatoes, you know, and garden things, and a lot of bread you'd have to bake. I was told that in Fredonia here, when they had that store, grocery store, they only ordered 2 loaves of bread. Nobody had bought bread. I was just told that the other day, and 2 loaves of bread, and that was for this one person that worked in the store. He wanted his toast from bought bread, and that's all they ordered was 2 loaves. And now the truck comes in, you know, and because nobody knew about it, they just baked their bread. They had to have flour and yeast, you know. I was just told that the other day by somebody that from the store. I thought that was interesting, and I knew the person that it was.
How often would you go to town to get supplies for the kitchen?
Not very often. Only if you had to go in for, you know, like maybe take cream and sell the cream, and eggs or so, and then you would buy your groceries. It wasn't like a weekly thing. It's just, you know, when you had enough to make the trip. We were always glad when our dad went to town, because he would sometimes buy cookies and different stuff, where my mother would just buy the essentials. She very thrifty, you know, this and that, because you could bake the cookies, but my dad would buy it sometimes. Oh, we thought that. And I know one time he would buy bananas, you know. Oh, we thought that was something. So we liked if Dad went to town, because he would like to buy what my mother thought really wasn't necessary.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the kitchen?
Well, I just remember the kitchen as a very popular place, I think, and it still is to this day. People kind of gather around the kitchen, and this brings back many memories. All these things, and white kitchens were always white. Now they're all colors, but so I like a white kitchen. And this is my mother-in-law's tablecloth. I like when we were first married. That's the only one she had. She'd always put it on. And so when they passed away, then they said, this goes to me, because I always liked that tablecloth. So I like that. And it's old. Has its color, though. And of course, everybody wore aprons.
How many aprons would your mother have?
She had quite a few. But I know some people would wear like 2 and they'd take one off. But my mother never did. I just always kind of saw her with the same, you know, same type of apron, yeah. And of course, the aprons were, you do everything with the apron. You know, you gather eggs with it, put eggs in the apron. There's a lot of things you do with an apron. So some people said you even wipe the kid's nose with the apron.
Would your mother make her own apron?
I can't remember her sewing that much. I don't remember if she did or not. I really can't say. I know she had them, but I'm sure she did, or were given to her or something, but I'm sure they didn't buy any. I don't think you could buy aprons then.
What about your clothes that you wore? Were they store-bought or were they handmade?
A lot of them were orders from a catalog. We'd get to order something from the catalog. My mother didn't sew, all of her. She would order things. Well, I was just going to mention this here. The People's Store, Cullum. This is John Brosz. October 9, 1943, he bought groceries. Post Toasties, 9 cents. Wheaties, 10 cents. Grapes, 53. Must have had quite a few grapes. He bought grapes. Chocolate chips, 15 cents. Tissue, 5 cents. Rice, 13 cents. And I'm sure they had a crate of eggs. They sold the eggs because that's how they'd buy groceries from their eggs. Yeah, and I think there was 26 cents left over down here. How they figured that out. So I thought that was interesting. So,
going back to the catalog,
yeah.
What else did you order out of the catalog?
Well, I would say like our school clothes, your stockings and all that. I can just see we'd wait for the mailman to come, and actually a lot. I just gave my daughter Julie. It was a cookie jar. It was a bare cookie jar. And we were like 8, 9, 10 years old, my brother and sister. And we also looked at the catalog. And then we liked that teddy bear, so we ordered that for my mother for Mother's Day. And we still had it. It was at my house. So we had something at Circle show and tell, so I showed that for Mother's Day. But I gave it to Julie, she's the oldest, but that was, that's old. That was almost 70 years old at 6. It's the cookie jar bear, with the salt and pepper shaker. Never broke, traveled around, But I remember we ordered that from the catalog. So, I guess we ordered a lot of things, yeah. And I know in the spring we'd get new shoes. We each got a pair of new shoes, and we'd have white. And if we'd go anywhere and they get dirty, I always polished them. I always kept the shoes nice and white and polished. That was my job. I enjoyed, because I know we'd get to go to town again. Go to grandma's or go to church or somewhere. Have new white shoes.
How often did you get to go to town?
Well, later in the earlier years, the winter, hardly not at all, when the weather was bad. But I know in the summer, we would go Saturday, like in Fredonia, we'd go Saturday nights. We'd do the grocery shopping and buy whatever, parts, whatever. And us kids got to dress up and we'd walk the streets here with our cousins. And when we were young, it was fun. That was in the summer. And then I remember my dad liked Ma and Pa Kettle movies. So if Ma and Pa Kettle were on in Cullum movie theater, we would go to the movie. We'd get to go to Ma and Pa Kettle. It's the only time I remember him wanting to go to a movie. And we'd all go. I think it was 15 cents or 10 cents or whatever then.
You mentioned earlier waiting for your goods to arrive from the catalog.
Oh yeah.
How often did your mail come?
It was daily. We had a weather permitting. Yeah. Yeah, I remember it was at the postman would drive daily, yeah. And we could see him driving, from our farm. There was a hill where you'd see all the cars. And we just knew who went to town. We knew all the cars. And we saw the mailman. So we'd go and get the mail. And then in the summer, we always got the Fargo form because my sister was deaf. She wanted to keep up in the news, so she wanted the paper. So we'd always get the Fargo form.
Did your family get any German language material through the mail?
No. My grandparents would have done that, but not our family.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, maybe tomorrow I could think of something, not right now. Well, I just offered you some Coop and you liked it, well, that's good. Rhubarb Coop, because, not every young person likes that. So, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I have to bake some again, because somebody wants 6 Coop, and I have to bake some.
What room are we in right now, Vic?
We're in a little, it's like a washroom where you'd wash your hands, and it would even be an outhouse behind the door that you'd use. It's behind the door, and that's where you'd have your water stand and medicine cabinet, all little things. And this is, a water pail and dipper. And we always have to go and get fresh water. And the kids would all be in line to drink water out of the same dipper, And nobody got sick from it, I guess. And washing clothes. Well, this was an old-fashioned where you would really rub, and some are glass and some are metal, but this is a glass, and the glass is a little more, I guess it's better than the metal. It doesn't wear out as fast. And then we'd use a homemade soap. Everybody made homemade soap out of lye and the lard from the hogs, and it was good, strong stuff. And then you could buy the P&G later on. So we had that too. And it was Monday usually was wash day, unless the weather was bad. You'd wait till it was better, but you just wash all the clothes and bedding and just everything, the lines, like I said, weather permitting. And you carried all the water and heated on the kerosene stove, and later on we had a better machine that you didn't have to do by hand. It was from a motor, with the wringer type. That was really a high scale. But I wanted to mention this. This is I could still see my father when he'd sit down to shave. He would do this, and he'd sit down, have a mirror there, and do all that, and just take his time at it. And then also found this bull germ. It has the papers in it and everything. And my father would roll his own cigarettes with the bull germ. And it's like, I don't know how much they cost or anything, but something on there anyway. But I found this, so. And this towel here, it was either my grandmother, I got one, and my husband did too, or was it his grandma? She crocheted this and put it on the towel. But I think it's Art's grandma, Mrs. Hawsey, did that. But I know I have one too. But that's what the ladies would do. They would, crochet and have the towels look nice. And
When you got done washing the clothes, where would you dry them?
oh, we'd hang them on the line. Oh yeah. And as soon as they were dry, then you would bring some in and fold them and if you to iron. I have irons in there. You wouldn't iron the same day because there wasn't time for that. But you would take them and what needed to be ironed, you'd roll it up and sprinkle a bit and roll it up and put it in a basket and just keep it till you had time to iron. And you'd iron on in summer we'd iron on the kerosene stove. We'd heat them on the kerosene stove. And then you'd just take turns and cool off, take another one. But yeah, you had wash lines you'd hang everything out on the line. And it was funny, in my neighborhood, I could hear my mother say, oh, she's got her towels hanging out already, They'd kind of race who'd be beating them. And they could tell, well, she's washing already, she's got these out. And, oh, her towels, they're sure nice and white, They would do that. I can just hear them talking about that. Oh, yeah, they should sober us, sober I mean clean. She's a clean woman. Her towels are so nice and white, and so that was their way of, I guess, commuting with each other.
Okay. What about during the winter? Where would you hang your clothes?
Oh, in the house. In fact, this house, in the other room, there's a nail there and a nail there, and I know why. They strung string across, and then they would hang it up. And sometimes, I know we'd hang them outside first, and they'd freeze, and they'd bring them in, and then hang them up. And especially, I even did that. Well, with the diapers, when they were stained, you'd hang them out, the sun would take out the stain. And then you'd bring them in and hang them up, and they smelled so nice and fresh because you had them outside. But I was thinking, with a big family of 9, 12, small house, I bet they didn't change clothes every night.
All right. You mentioned getting water to do laundry. Where would you get the water to do your baths?
Oh, yeah, well, then you'd have a tub. We just have a regular round tub. And we would heat it. It would be, Oh, in the winter you'd melt snow a lot because that was nice soft water. And you'd wash your hair especially in the snow water because that was nice and soft. And then, yeah, you're always melting snow in the winter. It was nice white snow because it was heavy, and yeah, there was always a tub on the stove with melting snow, and then use it to wash.
Did you have to share bath water with anybody else?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. My sister was, well, first it was my little brother, he'd get washed. And then my sister, and then me, and then my big brother last. We would just add water. And my parents, I don't know. They did their own thing in the bedroom. I don't know. I mean, how they washed. They washed. They had their own way of washing. But us four kids, I know we would have it upstairs, and then we'd carry the bucket down and throw it out. Oh yeah.
You mentioned a medicine cabinet earlier.
Yeah.
What types of things would you keep in the medicine cabinet when you're growing up?
Well, I know Vicks was a thing, and Vaseline, and there was this a liniment. It's called. I think it was sold by Raleigh's or Watkins. It's liniment in a way. That was I used that for many things, and then that would be in. Your shaving toothbrush, and that would just be a little wooden one usually. Not it wasn't that much, but there were a few things in there.
Okay. And did you have any home remedies to use?
Oh yeah, I know we would put Vicks into some little cover and put it on the stove so it'd get really hot, and then you breathe that in. I know we did that a lot for our colds. And then I always had a toothache. Oh my gosh. So my mother would take strings from a towel, because we didn't have cotton, but she, like a dish towel, it would get frayed, and she'd take that off and dip it into vanilla and then put it in by my tooth, because there's alcohol in there, and that would ease the tooth. I remember crying more about toothache than anything in my whole life. And but I had a disease, it's called pyorrhea in my teeth. So I was quite young when it happened, just extracted because I had bad ones. But anyway, but I remember that vanilla helped my toothache. Didn't go to the dentist. Maybe there weren't any around, I don't know.
Did anyone from your family ever have to go to the doctor or anything besides your sister?
Not that much that I know. All I know is when our kids were, I was, I think, 4, my brother 5, my sister 6, yeah. Then my mother had a big surgery in Bismarck, and they said she only had 50% chance of living because she had infected something, I don't know, some big infection. And for surgery, gallstone infected or whatever, and but she survived, and she came, and then our neighbor came over to take care of us because my dad went to the hospital, and then he told her that, and then she said, send the kids so they get an education. That was her main thing. She told my daddy, yeah. So, but she survived, so that I remember. But then the lady that, she's a relative, she came over and took care of us, and she cooked, I'll never forget that. She made cornmeal, I like cornmeal, with sugar and cream on it, or milk. But she had cream with onions. That was the gravy, and that's all we had, and I just couldn't eat that. She said, you eat them. I just couldn't eat those onions. I was sitting there crying, I just couldn't eat that. And I just remember that. But you know, she took care of us well. And she brought her children along too, so that we were all together.
All right, is there anything you'd like to add about the washroom or laundry?
Oh, well, it was kind of a very important day, because we were glad to, get it, because you had to do it, and we were just glad to have nice clean beds and have everything ready so you could iron it. So you might get to go to town again in a nice starched dress or something. And so it was a big project. Worse in the winter than in the summer, because you'd hang out, in the winter, hanging this around. Then by morning it'd be dry, and you'd fold it up. And, yeah.
What was your most stressful childhood memory?
I think it's having a toothache. I mean, I really do. Oh, I think it's the most painful thing is having a toothache. And I had my share of that. That I would say is the most stressful, right, that I can think of.
Okay. And what was your happiest childhood memory?
Well, I think when we could go to a Christmas program in church, we'd go, and then we'd get a new dress for that. And we'd each get a sack from church with all goodies in it. We'd write our name on it. That was really a highlight. And then I think just doing things together with relatives was very important.
Okay. What types of goodies would you get in your sacks?
Oh, there was nuts and peanuts and orange, apple, and then little animal cookies. And some hard Christmas candy right in, with that. And other little things, but that part I remember.
Okay. Did you have a lot of programs?
Oh, and then we had a school program, and then a church program where we'd say our piece, in church. And in school, we always had programs. Sometimes schools would go together, and then we have a pie social after the program, and the basket social. Sometimes parents would bring and they'd auction off, and those were fun times. Yeah, our country schools. I remember them as good memories. Going to school, and that one year I remember I got to wear that pink dress I got. I had a side ache one day, and they thought it was appendicitis, so my dad took me to Edgerly to a doctor. Well, it wasn't. It was something else. But so anyway, he bought me this pretty pink dress. So I got to wear it to the Christmas program. Right. Taffeta, pink taffeta with 3 tiers, and it was like this square with a little green ribbon. It's cute. I think I was a 4th grader then.
Okay. What was the most adventurous thing that you did during your childhood?
Oh, well, yes. My brother and I were walking to school, and then my grandparents, the Kasanki, were still on the farm when we had quite a ways to walk, and then that must have been after Star died, the horse died. And we walked, and here was a mean black bull was chasing us. So we went up in this rock pile, and then I cried, "Mama, Mama," and Lloyd said, "Shh, quiet, don't cry." I just remember that, be quiet, don't cry, because the bull should be quiet. So, and here was this black bull. Well, then my grandparents, they saw that they were only a mile and a half apart. We had to pass their farm to get to our farm. Well, anyway, so they noticed that, so they came driving up, and they took us home then with their car and took us home. And my grandpa sold that black bull after that. He said, "He's not going to get any of my children." That black bull, he sold it. Big, mean black bull. I remember that. Talk about that. That's probably why I remember it.
All right. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about your childhood memories?
I think I just grew up too fast. No, right offhand, I can't. Oh, yes, I have to say this. I had a speech impediment. I stuttered. I don't know, started stuttering. I don't know what causes that, but I did. And then I come home from school, and I want to tell my mother the whole thing that happened, and it took me forever to get it out. I just couldn't say it. I don't know why. And but I got over it. I don't know. Even in high school, I still had a problem, but I got over it. But I think I always say when I said my wedding vows, I thought, what if I start stuttering? And I thought that would have been awful, but I didn't. But I think it's because my husband prayed for me. That's what I think. So, I'm over that. And my mother said, "Oh my gosh, would Dad be proud of me?" Because I'm very active in the United Methodist Women, and where I work at the nursing home 43 years, and I'm active in many things, Germans from Russia. And she said, Dad was so worried about me because I stuttered, no more. So.
All right. Why do you think it's important to tell your story?
Well, I think it's very important. Because, we lived it, you know about it, and the next person has their life. They live their life. And they like to hear stories. It's very important. I was doing interviews for the EUB people, you know. They had people for the Methodists. I'm with the archives of and they had people with Methodists, but no with the EUB. So there I was doing interviews at Lehr and all these German people. It's very interesting because we merged from EUB to Methodist, and of course some object to this day why we did it, but had to be done. And so they had stories too, and I thought it was I found it very interesting to hear other people's stories. And some of them were pastors, how they struggled at the beginning, they didn't get a salary, they got food, So it was very interesting. Yeah, I think it's very important to share stories.
Okay. Are there any other final thoughts or observations you'd like to share?
Well, I think it's very nice of you too to do this. I just think I appreciate it very much that you two are doing this.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your stories with us.
You've been very kind.
All right.